how to start selling books on Amazon. So you've figured out that there's a side hustle that you can do by buying used books and selling them on Amazon, and you can make a pretty decent side hustle money. But there's a caveat. There's three things that a scam will tell you. The scam will tell you that it's easy, and that it's fast, and that it's passive. Amazon book selling is none of those, okay? It's not easy. It takes a long time to learn and do and get it going. It's not fast unless you have money. It can be faster if you have money. But it sure as heck ain't passive until years down the road whenever you're able to hire everybody out. So you're looking at a lot of hard work and a lot of, long time before you finally start seeing some money. You're not going to be able to start this business and make $1 million next week unless you dumped $2 million into the business already. Now, that's the main thing that I want to get understood in this, is because with how to start selling on Amazon, I could go over how to set up your account and everything, but I don't think that that's the part that people get hung up on. It's pretty easy to figure that out. Get a pro account, Amazon will send you a letter, you verify your account that you're real, and then you're up and running. It's pretty easy. Now, I want to get the main things that I think are important that you need to know before you start. And that's what I'm going to dive into in this video. And because there's a few things that are misconceptions about Amazon, and I want to clear those up. So the first thing that I recommend for everyone starting out on Amazon is have a good pile of money to start with. You don't have to, and I will get into that here in a second about a method that I started with when I didn't have any money to get the ball rolling for my business on this. But it would be in your best interest to have a good pile of money to start, because this is an inventory-based business. It's not a service-based. Service-based, you put your time in, you make your money. The harder you work, the more money you make. It's not that case. You can work as hard as you want, but you need to have inventory. Inventory is the lifeblood of this business. If you have a lot of inventory, but none of them sell, you're not making money. If you have little money and all of them sell, you're still not making money though, because you sold out, but now you don't have any inventory. So this business model is one of the toughest ones to learn out the gate, because it's inventory. You're learning how to handle inventory and how it ebbs and flows, and how some seasons you sell out completely, like Christmas. You'll sell out a ton of books, and then come February, your inventory is stagnant. You're not moving anything, and you're just like, what the heck? I made $10,000 last month. Now I'm barely making $2,000 this month. That is the biggest hard thing to learn about this business. If you don't have any business experience, of course. If you understand inventory and levels and all that, then you're good. But if you're just getting starting in any business, this is the part where you really want to focus on, and you really want to understand that inventory is everything. You want to get your inventory up at the beginning, and you want to keep a good steady flow of it, and understand that we have seasons in this business where sometimes you're going to sell a ton of books in the month, and then other times you're barely going to sell any of your inventory. So you have to be able to balance the inventory and be able to replace the inventory that gets sold without going broke. And that's the balance. Now, what I was talking about with there's a good second option to not having money to start, because most people who are getting into this business are like me whenever I started. I had a W-2 job. I wanted to, start something else that I could get money going somewhere else, somehow, some way. And I found Amazon, and I was like, okay, I can figure this out. And I would take $100. and I'd put it in the business. Now, $100 is not going to make you a lot of money if you're, buying bulk. Because there's 3 different methods for booksellers on Amazon. I'm sure there's more, but the 3 main ones are bulk buying, where you go out and you find a pallet of books. They call them gaylords. I know, funny. They call them gaylords. And so you go out, you buy a gaylord, and you sift through it, and you send in as much as you can. You're buying them for like at the pennies, so you can make money on a $12 sold book, and that's how you can make the money there. But that requires a pretty decent upfront chunk of money. Like, you can buy one for $500 to $1,000 to $2,000 depending on the gaylord. Then there's online arbitrage. This is my method. This is what I use. I use online arbitrage. What I do is I buy from Amazon and I turn around and sell them back on Amazon. This method requires a little bit more money. Not as much, I would say. I've never really done bulk, so I can't really speak to it. But it does require a little bit of money. You're buying books for, a little less than $10 sometimes, but you could be buying them all the way up to $100, and selling them for double the value, or, getting 30% back, hopefully, somewhere in there. But that requires a little bit of money. But the method that I'm talking about that you can start without getting, without having much money is what they call thrifting. But there's also, there's thrift stores, obviously. There's garage sales, there's library sales, there's any sales of books that you can find, like where you physically go to the store and they have like apps where you can scan it, and you can scan it, and on the app it'll tell you like, hey, this book's decent, this book's good, yada yada. Now I started there. That's where I started, because I could take $100 and I could turn that into like, 50 books, sometimes more depending on the sale. If you're doing garage sales, you can get a ton of books. You can almost get like a gaylord of books for half the price. But you're working. You're going to garage sale to garage sale to garage sale, buying books. Now this method, you have to be careful about it, because those scanning apps, they're good, and I'm not trying to hate on them or anything, but they're they go off of the buy box sometimes. So you want to try to look at the Keepograph, which is another app that really helps you see the value of the book. You want to go off of that and look at the lowest used offer count, or lowest used price. That way you don't, get hurt whenever the buy box isn't being given to you, especially new sellers. Because new sellers, you don't get the buy box for a while. Amazon doesn't really trust you quite yet. So they have to, kind of test you out, see if you will actually send the book, or you're actually sending, the book that you're saying, or, not sending counterfeit and stuff like that. So it takes a little bit of time. But that is the best way I would suggest. If you're just starting out, just pulling money out of your paycheck and putting whatever you can towards this, start there. Start with thrifting, get an understanding of what type of books you're looking for, and then you'll be able to scale this a lot faster, just because you're getting the understanding of it. But in my humble opinion, obviously there's going to be differences of opinions on this, but in my humble opinion, once you've figured that out, once you've done that for a while, you've got a good little flow of money coming in off of your business, move to online arbitrage, because it's time. It's all about time. You want to be able to understand that yes, thrifting is a good place to start, but it's not scalable. You have to physically drive to a store, and you have to physically scan, and you have to check out, and you have to bring them home, and you have to list them, and then you have to send them in. There's a lot of time involved in getting one shipment into Amazon. And so what I recommend is moving to online arbitrage, because you're literally just sitting at your computer, searching for books, and then you're buying them, and you can send them to you where you pack them and ship them. If you're doing that method, you're still taking out all the drive time, all the scan time. Well, not really scan time. You're still scanning books, but just online. but you're taking out the drive time and you physically going and scanning, because you're just sitting down and scanning books on your computer, and it's just hard to beat that with time wise. But yeah, that's what I don't think that you really need to go to bulk operations, because it is an operation. Once you get to that point, you really do need to hire people in order to actually scale that. But online arbitrage, you really don't need to hire anybody, and you could be making, some people make $100,000 profit, without any hiring. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't take that much. Now for the next one, that I think is probably the most important for especially people starting out in business. It's one that it's an area that I messed up on at the beginning, and in a couple years in, and I really didn't understand that I was looking at the wrong things. Whenever it was really, what I did was I was not looking at my profit. I was looking at my revenue. So what Amazon's gonna do is give you an app, and you're gonna be able to look at that app and see your sales, and it's gonna get addicting. You're gonna look at it constantly. Every single day, you're gonna look at it like, did I make a sale? Did I make a sale? Did I make a sale? And then what they do is they give you gold bars. And those gold bars it's just a graph showing you, where your sales are at and everything. But you get a little dopamine hit every time you see that, and you see you got a sale, and you're like, okay, I'm doing good. I made a sale, Then you see that you made, I don't know, $1,000 in a month, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually making some money at this. I'm doing good. And then the next month you make $2,000, and then the next month you make $3,000, and then $4,000, and then August hits the textbook season, and boom, you hit like $7,000. You're just like, wow, I'm making more money than my business, and then in my W-2 job, I don't need that job no more. I'm making more money here. And then you quit your job, and then you realize that, oh, that was just the August hit, and then, oh my gosh, your sales are tanked now, and you're back down to $1,000 a month again, and you're like, oh crap, what happened? And then you realize that, wait, that money's not going into my bank account. What money? Where did that money go? Like, why ain't I getting that money? And then you really look into it, and you dive deep into accounting and stuff, and you realize, oh no, that was just my revenue. I wasn't actually making that. I was making this much, which is like 30% of what I was seeing. So if you make $1,000, you make $300 of profit, and then you take out all the expenses, and then you're making like $50 of profit or something, because you gotta buy tools to run this business. If you can't tell, I'm talking from experience. I screwed up pretty big at the beginning of this journey, and I quit my job thinking that I was making a ton of money and stuff. This was also when I was doing online arbitrage for like traditional stuff, like buying brand new products. So I was making like razor thin margins, like 8%. And, I didn't understand the difference between revenue and profit. And I thought, my revenue was what I was making, and I was making like $10,000 a month, and, only making $2,000 at my job. So I was like, all right, let's go, let's do it. But I was wrong. That is not the best way to do it. You want to look at your profit. Break down. If you have to get a subscription to Sellerboard, I'll link it in the description below. That is the best tool if you're not accounting savvy, to look at where your numbers actually are. Just make sure you're putting in the COGS, and make sure you're putting in the expenses that you're incurring. Make sure that you put those in. If you need help, I am a bookkeeper, so you can book a call with me, and I can help you out. I'll put a link in the description below. Other than that, that's about it. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.